CNN in Time, the Sunday news magazine, 9 Eastern, only on CNN.
Those of you who are fans of showbiz this weekend, we apologize to you. It's being preempted this morning. Instead, we're going to be talking about the election, which continues on. In the election battleground of Florida, officials in Volusia County are hand-counting all the ballots cast on Tuesday.
That's right. And at this hour, Palm Beach County officials are set to begin a sample hand count of 3 precincts. Broward County plans to do a similar hand count on Monday. And in a 4th county, Miami-Dade, a hearing Tuesday will decide whether a manual vote count will be done.
Now, former Secretary of State James Baker is expected to seek an injunction to stop the manual recounts in Florida. We just got some response from the Gore campaign to that effort. This from CNN reporter Patty Davis, quoting campaign spokesman Doug Hattaway, saying, "We believe the hand count should go forward." This from Doug Hattaway. "There is absolutely no reason why people's votes should not be counted by human beings." That's an end of quote there. So once again, the rhetoric continuing back and forth between the two camps. CNN will bring you the news conference with James Baker as it happens. We expect it in the next half hour or so.
We're going to bring back into the mix now. We've received so many emails on the topic of this election. We're going to bring back in Bill Hemmer and Mike Betcher out of Tallahassee. And also Patty Davis is going to join us now from D.C. We're going to gather all our correspondents who have been covering this all morning for us and take some more emails and phone calls. And where should we begin? You want to take an email?
Well, let's take an email, and it's a bit of a civics lesson we're doing here, I think, folks. But here's one from Wilhelmina Sims, and we'll start it in Tallahassee, just because why not? Is it possible to have co-presidents? In other words, VP Gore and Governor Bush. Sort of, well, not unlike what they do in some parliamentary systems, a national unity government, as they've done in Israel in particular. Gentlemen, little civics 101.
I think that would require a new constitution. Don't you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, someone came up to me last night and said we should have a caretaker governor appointed, a government appointed. But you know, our Constitution doesn't allow for that, and frankly, I wouldn't want that.
And there's also speculation that if there is no president by January 20th, it goes to the Speaker of the House, which would be, we assume, Dennis Hastert. And if he is considered unqualified to serve based on the Constitution, not suggesting that he's not, it would go to the Senate. Speaker Pro Tem, Strom Thurmond, who will turn 98 in December. One thing I want to add quickly.
He is so smart, you know?
We have to talk about something, don't we? I interrupted Cindy before. I just wanted to add that, listen, the stakes are extremely high here. We're talking about control of the White House for the next 4 years. I think you would be very hard-pressed to find anybody in this country who does not want a quick solution, a quick end to this, but, you know, it's out of our hands right now. Maybe it'll come Tuesday, maybe it'll come Friday, maybe it'll be days or even weeks after that. We simply do not know.
All right, let's take it back down to Palm Beach. Cindy Metzger, who is not with us. How about this? Let's take it to Washington and Patty Davis for this one. This one comes from Pay Sullivan, Monmouth Beach, New Jersey. These ballots have been used before, referring to the Florida ballots. If the effect back then would have been sufficient to determine the outcome of the election, perhaps it might just have been an issue then as well. He brings out an important point. It's we haven't had an election this close, have we, Patty?
We haven't had an election this close since 1960 with the Kennedy and Nixon election. And in fact, you know, there was a press conference yesterday at William Daley, the Gore campaign chief, as well as Mr. Christopher, former Secretary of State. He's an observer for the Gore campaign down in Tallahassee. And the question was asked about that particular issue, butterfly ballots. Specifically, it turns out that in Chicago and Cook County, where I live, there is a butterfly ballot. I voted on one this year, in particular on judicial appointments, and it was very confusing. And the Gore campaign reaction to that is that I believe this came from Chris Lehane, who's one of the spokesmen for the Gore campaign, that was just on the judicial ballot. It wasn't on the presidential ballot. So, but I can tell you from personally that it was difficult to vote on that judicial retention ballot with that butterfly ballot.
All right, another bit of Civics 101 here. This question comes from Amar Varma. Can Ralph Nader give his support to Gore and end all this at this time? Is there a law against that? Gentlemen?
Well, he can give his support to Gore, but he can't give his votes to Gore, and he has no electoral votes to or electors to give up and give to either Bush or Gore. So no, he can't.
Unless they
Can't give
re-voted,
votes
and
away,
that's
can
never
you?
been done.
All right.
So, can't give votes away. Well, you can in Chicago.
Gentlemen, I
No,
need
just
to,
kidding.
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt for just a moment. We've got to send it over to Kira.
The people have spoken. That's what President Clinton is saying. We're going to turn to his weekly radio address where he's addressed Americans to be patient with this entire process.
Fundamental right of citizenship. It sure was answered on Tuesday. No American will ever again be able to seriously say, my vote doesn't count. President Franklin Roosevelt once said, democracy is not a static thing. It is an everlasting march. Our founders may not have foreseen every challenge in the march of democracy, but they crafted a constitution that would. The people have spoken. The important thing for all of us to remember now is that a process for resolving the discrepancies and challenges to the election is in motion. The rest of us need to be patient and wait for the results. I want to congratulate both Vice President Gore and Governor Bush for a vigorous and hard-fought campaign. Once again, the world has seen democracy in action. The events unfolding in Florida are not a sign of the division of our nation, but of the vitality of our debate, which will be resolved through the vibrancy of our Constitution and laws. Regardless of the outcome, we will come together as a nation, as we always do. As this election unfolds, the nation's business continues. Tomorrow, I will begin a trip to Asia that will end in Vietnam. I will be the first president to visit that nation since the height of the Vietnam War. I will go to open a new chapter in our relationship with its people. For nearly a decade now, we have been building a more normal relationship with Vietnam, basing each step forward on progress and accounting for Americans missing from the war in Vietnam. We've made great strides, repatriating remains, obtaining documents, never forgetting that each case represents a brave American with a name, a home, a family that cares about his fate. I will make clear to Vietnam that we expect continued cooperation. I will also offer the support of the American people as Vietnam becomes more open to the world, promoting trade and more ties among our people, and championing human rights and religious freedom. We also have important business here at home. As Congress prepares to finish its work for the year, I urge the members to build on the bipartisan progress we have already made. Let's finish the job of improving our schools, resolve our differences on immigration and worker safety, and let's raise the minimum wage. We should pledge to get these things done for the American people before the next president takes office in January. A couple of nights ago, we celebrated the 200th anniversary of the White House. We marked much more than the bicentennial of a building. Through 2 centuries of war and peace, triumph and tragedy, the White House has stood as the living symbol of our democracy. It has welcomed every president since John Adams under its roof, always through a peaceful transition of power. This January, as it has done for 200 years, it will do so again, because of the timeless power of our Constitution and our undying faith in we the people. Thanks for listening.
And for more reaction on the president's address, we're going to turn to our White House correspondent, Kelly Wallace. She's live in Washington, D.C. this morning. Good morning, Kelly.
Well, good morning, Kira. You heard the president, of course, in that radio address. It's interesting, Kira. The president is really trying to strike a very delicate balance. Of course, he does hope and would like to see Al Gore succeed him as the 43rd president of the United States. But he is also trying to maintain his duties as the nation's leader, trying to urge the American people to be calm, trying to make sure there is stability in this country as we all face this very unprecedented situation of this unresolved election. We heard the president say the American people should be patient and wait for the results as the vote counting continues in Florida and in other states. He also said, Kira, that no American should ever then say that his or her vote doesn't matter. Obviously, the president's saying in this election, we have seen that every vote does count. He did congratulate both the vice president and Governor Bush for what he called a vigorous and hard-fought campaign. And he said, as he said the other night at this incredible dinner, the 200th anniversary of the White House dinner, where you had not only President Clinton, but former President Bush and the Carters and the Fords, President saying in this radio address what he said the other night, that what we are seeing now basically shows the vitality of the debate in this country. The president saying that this election will be resolved based on our Constitution and the rule of law. Kira?
Well, this election is definitely going to make history, is already making history, Kelly. Another historic topic, the historic visit to Vietnam. When I saw you at the White House last week, you were mentioning you might even be going. Are you going to go, and what's in store in Vietnam?
Yes, Kira, I'm very lucky that I will be going on this trip to Vietnam. The president, as we heard, talking about this trip in his radio address. Kira, it will be the first visit by a president to Vietnam since the end of the Vietnam War. The president will leave Sunday. He will go to Hawaii for just a little bit of rest and relaxation. Then he will head to Brunei for the Asian Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. And then he will spend about 3 days in Vietnam. Basically, this White House saying that the president, since he entered office back in 1993, has been working on trying to build a more normal relationship with Vietnam based on progress when it comes to the accounting of those missing in action from the war. The president saying that on this trip, he will encourage Vietnam to continue that cooperation. He will also focus on trade and issues such as human rights and religious freedom. And Kira, as you know, this is obviously somewhat of a controversial trip for this president. He opposed the war about 25 years ago when he was a graduate student. There was also a lot of controversy about whether or not he actually avoided the draft. Many critics calling him a draft dodger. So certainly some controversy. The president, though, trying to move the chapter with the country in a new direction. Kira?
All right, Kelly Wallace, live from the White House this morning. Thank you. Miles?
All right, we're going to take a break. When we return, we will be checking in with our reporters in Tallahassee, Mike Betcher, Bill Hemmer, standing by. We'll be taking a little bit more of your email. We're also standing by for a live news conference from James Baker, the former Secretary of State, who is the point person for the Bush campaign in Florida. Lots more ahead. Stay with us on CNN.
Papa, the ref is blind. Penalty.
That was no penalty.
MCI lets you call Western Europe for just 9 cents a minute all weekend long, so you can get great low rates at home and abroad. Call 1-800-476-SAVE to sign up now and get 1 hour of free calling to anywhere in the world.
Email your pictures with sound and motion, fast and easy. Sony Mavica.
Mr. Wallace.
And you are just going to love these turtles.
Your terms just aren't right.
I'm so sorry.
Mr. Regan, your rates are a little high.
That's not good. What's the word I'm thinking of?
I think it's no.
Mm-hmm. No.
Want banks to compete over you? Come to LendingTree.com. Fill out one form and get up to 4 offers within hours.
Oh, what a lovely thought.
When banks compete, you win at LendingTree.com.
See how beautiful 60 can look. See how invisible osteoporosis can be. If you're over 60, there's a nearly 1 in 2 chance you have it. So ask your doctor about a bone density test and treatments that can help.
Today on CNN.com. Feeling down, depressed? Just log on. A visit to a .com shrink may just be a click away. Is cybertherapy a viable alternative? Today, 12:30 Eastern.
You're looking at a live picture now where we are expecting the Republican Party to go to federal court to seek an injunction to prevent a third recount in certain Florida counties. We will bring you that live conference with James Baker as soon as it happens. Meanwhile, we have been talking politics and received so many emails that the server has not crashed yet.
Well, we're fortunate of that. And we tip the hat to our folks in WITS as we call it here, the folks who keep the computers running. We have in Tallahassee Bill Hemmer, Mike Betcher, and we have in Washington joining us Patty Davis. And let's go right back to the emails. We're sorting through a very deep bag of emails indeed, if you will. This one comes from O.P. Ditch. Why did the Palm Beach board just say they were going to do a complete machine recount? Isn't the Associated Press reporting that all 67 counties have recounted and the lead was only 327? What is going on here? Gentlemen, help folks, because there is confusion about the numbers here. AP has a different number from the official Florida count. Could you explain that to folks?
Yeah, what happens here at the state capitol on the 18th floor of the Division of Elections office is they basically are taking the numbers from the counties. The counties call up or fax, and then eventually will send certified copies of the numbers they have to this office. So they're basically a collection of information service. What the AP did was go out and collect the information themselves. They went and called the various counties, and they called every county. Now, the big difference in the vote totals is the Palm Beach County is the only county missing here, and that is the one county that had a really big variance in votes that helped Al Gore. So that's what the difference in the vote total is right now in the official total, is that missing Palm Beach County, because they're still counting.
But we also have a lot of confidence in the AP as well. Yeah. They're part of, so our viewers know, this voter news service, this VNS you hear so much about. They're part of that consortium, too, so a lot of credibility on this issue, too.
And we had dipped into a press conference, guys, earlier on with the canvassing board there in Florida, and they had mentioned, this might have been what the email was, the gentleman was talking about, that a recent congressional race, they were going to have a full machine recount and rejected a manual recount. So maybe there was a little confusion there. We're going to turn to the phones. Paul's on the line from Tennessee. He's got a question about the recount. Go ahead, Paul.
Good morning.
Good morning.
If you do ballots by hand and count them by machine, then you probably can assume there's some number of ballots that were not counted for whatever reason. My question is it fair to go into only the Democratic counties to do a recount to find those ones that were thrown out? And because you can expect that a higher percentage of those would be Democratic votes.
Mike?
I'm glad you asked that question, because we just got some information about the thinking of the Bush camp, why they're going to file this injunction or try to get this injunction to stop the hand count. That's precisely their thinking, that if you have a hand count, there are always more votes that end up in the total. And since Vice President Gore won many more votes there proportionally than Vice President Bush in this county, that his total would go further than Governor Bush's, and that he could perhaps surpass that gap. And they think it's unfair that this hand count then would be done only in a Democratic county. They're thinking it would be then, okay, we have to go to the Republican counties where we would gain more proportionally, and this spiral would begin.
And that's where that whole issue of Duval County now comes in northeastern Florida, because if indeed 22,000 ballots were thrown out in Duval near Jacksonville, a county that went overwhelmingly in favor of the Texas governor by about 44,000 votes, look for, indeed, if Palm Beach continues to stir and go against the Bush campaign, they're going to go to that corner of Florida, which again begs the question, where and when does it all end?
Good question. Thanks, by the way, to our people covering Bush for helping me with that information. So.
All right. Let's do another email. And Patty Davis, who is joining us in Washington, I think is a good person to throw this one at. Is there a law in the elections that will allow President Bill Clinton to call a meeting of Congress to vote on to elect into office the new president, since they have a big mess of errors during this presidential election? Boy, there's an understatement this morning. Patty?
I don't believe so. President Clinton, of course, will, be leaving office January 20th. It's really up to the Electoral College to be choosing and throw their support behind one of these candidates or the other. So I don't believe President Clinton would have a role in that.
Gentlemen, I suppose the president could announce, if he felt at the appropriate time, could create some sort of special bipartisan committee to investigate this, couldn't he?
He could. I guess he could do whatever he wanted, but...
I guess to investigate it, but I'm not sure what kind of legal authority it would have.
Yeah, in addition to that, I just wonder really right now where things are going to move forward in the next coming days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week, and what happens next Friday when the official count comes out from the state of Florida, which should given all things equal, give you a winner, be it Al Gore or George W. Bush out of the state. And again, as we have talked, there's discrepancies in other parts of the country, but right now Florida is still the key because of those 25 electoral votes. If either man gets those votes, they're at 270 minimum, which gives them the majority in the Electoral College and should, under normal circumstances, give them the White House.
Absolutely.
All right, we're also joined by Cindy Metzger, who's a reporter down in Palm Beach for the Florida Sun-Sentinel. This is a good question for her. It comes to us from Abu Dhabi. Believe it or not, Bruce Dauphine is there. If 15,000 ballots were discarded in 1996 in Palm Beach, Florida, presidential elections, why wasn't that butterfly ballot gotten rid of after that? Obviously, it is necessary for the big blowout that has come with this election to begin a process to make the voting process easier and more reliable. Cindy?
What's going on?
Are you not able to hear us? Cindy? I believe Cindy is not with us. Gentlemen, I think you might have heard the question. The bottom line is, why didn't they throw out the butterflies after they had the problems in the last go-round?
That's a good question, and we have talked here with experts in Tallahassee who used to run the entire state division of Florida when it comes to the elections. And the key he made, the key point he tried to impress upon us is not only in various states across the country, but also at the county level. He believes in large measure the amount of money distributed on a state level to the counties and the amount of money the counties have, a low priority is actually the elections division, because you have a midterm election, listen, every 2 years, a presidential race comes around every 4 years. We have never seen a race this close before, so it really has not been that big of an issue. The other thing I heard, and I don't know if you can confirm this or not, but typically within an elections division, the absentee ballots many times are never even opened or counted. They're always put to the end. They take the least priority because if the difference of the margin between two candidates is greater than the number of absentee ballots you get, well, they don't waste their time even opening and looking those ballots. But again, different story this year.
Yeah, and in speaking to Dave Cardwell, who used to be the director of the division of elections here, he told us one good thing that will come out of this is perhaps the voting process will get more priority, more money now, and we may see a move to more sophisticated, simpler to use, more valid ballots, basically.
Something beyond 1950s technology, we hope, gentlemen. By the way,
Yeah.
we need to remind our viewers that we are expected to be about 7 minutes away from an important news conference. James Baker, the former Secretary of State under the Bush administration, the senior Bush, we should say, is going to walk up to that podium and address the media and give us the latest wrinkle in all of this. We, of course, be bringing that to you live as it happens. In the meantime, we have Cindy Metzger back with us. She's able to hear us. And Cindy, the question you couldn't hear is, if 15,000 ballots were discarded in 1996 in Palm Beach, why wasn't that butterfly ballot gotten rid of after that?
I don't know at this point that the 15,000 ballots were invalid at this time because of the butterfly ballot. You get double punching, which is the reason that ballots are thrown out. One of the reasons that ballots are thrown out. You get that in any election, no matter how you organize the punches. Now, do you get them in that number? I don't know. It's hard to say at this point. In fact, the 15,000 figure, we're not sure what that comes from at this point, whether that was all ballots that were thrown out in every race or whether that was strictly in the presidential.
Well, doesn't cost come into play here? Isn't it a lot less expensive to do the butterfly ballot method?
It's cost, but it's also the fact that in a ballot like we had this week, you've only got a limited number of pages that you can have on that ballot, and so you're trying to keep you're trying to make it all fit on one page or all in one ballot, and the booklet can only be a certain size. So that's really what they're trying to do. The other thing is the supervisor of elections here says she was trying to make the print large enough or make it stand out enough that readers or the voters could read it. And so that was a factor. It really wasn't, while there was a space issue, it wasn't solely that. It was also a readability issue.
All right, this next email comes from Dr. Vijay Gombar, and I put it in not as a question to anybody, I just put it in because I liked it. No wonder math is fuzzy for Bush. No wonder Gore's numbers do not add up. I now understand why both candidates want to spend more money on schools to teach kids counting. And we'll just leave that at that. This next one comes from Juan Hardy in Frederick, Maryland. How is Washington going to take the obvious problems from this election to repair the flaws that are becoming apparent in our voting system? Will we see a change in the near future? Patty Davis, any changes expected there on the Hill?
Well, that's a really good question. There are several senators, Dick Durbin from Illinois, another congressman from Illinois as well, that are trying to get the Electoral College done away with. They have introduced a bill and saying that it just doesn't, it shouldn't be used anymore because you see the problems that it's created in this election, that perhaps the winner of the popular vote won't win the election. So there is some move in Washington to do away with it, but I had heard that it has been tried hundreds and hundreds of times throughout our country's history, that politicians have tried to get rid of the Electoral College, have proposed that, and it's never happened yet. So it would seem that the odds are against that happening this time, but there'll be plenty of attempts here in Washington to do that.
All right, Patty, we are just about 3 minutes away, we think, from that news conference from James Baker representing the Bush camp. And let's talk a moment about this injunction. You have just reported a little while ago, I was reading the quote, that one of the campaign spokesmen for the Gore camp is out with some fairly strong rhetoric anticipating what Mr. Baker might be saying. He's Doug Hattaway saying we believe that the hand count should go forward, and elaborating on from there. Is there a fair amount of anger right now in the Gore camp over this possibility of an injunction to stop the hand count?
Well, they certainly don't want that hand count to be stopped because they feel specifically, they say in Broward County, there were some 6,700 of these perhaps votes that they feel may have gone to Al Gore. They're not sure, but there was not much of an impression. There was an impression for either Bush or Gore, but that would have to be caught by hand rather than by machine. They weren't able to catch it by hand. So they think by hand count, they can actually perhaps get a better count on what happened in Broward County with those 6,700 votes. But he's also saying that that the Bush campaign is going to court basically to stop what local officials want there in Florida. That they want to count their own citizens' votes. And Doug Hattaway, the national spokesman for the Gore campaign, says that's not right. Says what really needs to be done here is a full, fair, and accurate account, and the federal government should not stop in and preempt local officials from doing what they want to do. One thing he doesn't mention is that Democrats, in the first place, asked for that hand count.
Well, you know, it's interesting, Patty, because as the week wore on, if you were sort of measuring the temperature of the rhetoric, it was very high, and then it cooled down. And now, as this legal skirmish heats up, I feel you get the sense the rhetoric is once again heating up. And we should remind our viewers, any moment now, we're going to see James Baker walk onto that podium. We will, of course, break away immediately as soon as he begins talking. And, Patty, do you get the sense we're back in an upscale on the rhetoric?
The Gore campaign saying that it will have its own legal representatives standing by to do whatever it needs to do in reaction to what the Bush campaign does, perhaps in court today. So you could hear more talk of legal options here by the Gore campaign. They've kind of backed off that, saying that yesterday that its lawyers felt strongly rather than, stronger words,
Patty,
but they just felt strongly.
Patty, I have to interrupt you. James Baker at the podium. James Baker representing the Bush campaign in Florida.
Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by repeating what I said yesterday. The vote in Florida has been counted, and the vote in Florida has been recounted. Governor George W. Bush was the winner of the vote, and he was also the winner of the recount. Based on these results, we urge the Gore campaign to accept the finality of the election, subject, of course, to the counting of the overseas absentee ballots in accordance with law. They obviously have decided instead to proceed with yet a third count of votes in a number of prominently Democratic counties. This course of action is regrettable. Moreover, in recent days, supporters of our opponents have filed a number of lawsuits, at least 8 by last count, challenging in different ways the results of the election. I said yesterday that we would vigorously oppose the Gore campaign's efforts to keep recounting until it likes the result. And therefore, this morning, we have asked that the United States District Court for the Southern District of Florida preserve the integrity and the consistency and the equality and the finality of the most important civic action that Americans take, their votes in an election for President of the United States. We feel we have no other choice. The manual vote count sought by the Gore campaign would not be more accurate than an automated count. Indeed, it would be less fair and less accurate. Human error, individual subjectivity, and decisions to, quote, determine the voter's intent, close quote, would replace precision machinery in tabulating millions of small marks and fragile hole punches. There would be countless opportunities for the ballots to be subject to a whole host of risks. The potential for mischief would exist to a far greater degree than in the automated count and recount that these very ballots have already been subjected to. It is precisely, ladies and gentlemen, for these reasons that our democracy over the years has moved increasingly from hand counting of votes to machine counting. Machines are neither Republicans nor Democrats, and therefore can be neither consciously nor unconsciously biased. There are not even any procedures or standards to govern this third and selective vote count. A manual recount permits the electoral boards in each county in Florida to determine the intent of the voter without setting forth any standards at all for deciding that intent. One electoral board may decide to count votes that are not fully punched. Another may not. One electoral board may decide that a stray mark indicated an intent to vote for a particular candidate. Another may not. One electoral board may try to determine the intent of voters who marked multiple candidates on a ballot, and another may not. If this new selective recounting process proceeds, the votes in some counties will be counted in a completely different and standardless manner from the votes in the remaining counties. At this point, a changed result would not be the most accurate result. It would simply be the most recent result. Therefore, we ask that there be no further recounts of already recounted ballots. We regret that we were compelled to take this action. At some point, however, Florida's voters, and indeed all Americans, are entitled to some finality in the election process. I keep remembering that day when I was with President Ford following another hard-fought election that was decided by a razor-thin margin. Many in the room advised President Ford to challenge the result with just one recount. President Ford said no. He spoke about the country's interest. Now, 24 years later, our opponents have lost a vote. They've even lost a recount of that vote. And sadly, they've chosen another course. And so the country has been pushed in a very different direction. As I cautioned yesterday, there is no reasonable end to this process if it slips away. First in Florida, but potentially in other states as well. But there is still a fair way to end all of this. We urge our opponents to join with us in accepting the recounted vote of the people of Florida, subject, of course, to the result of a count of the overseas ballots, which are greater than the present tabulation of the recounted vote. If they will do this, we will promptly dismiss this action.
Was there a concern?
Just a minute, just wait a minute, yeah.
Mr. Vicker, was there a concern in the Bush camp that hand counting in a predominantly Democratic, that voted predominantly Democratic in the election could put your margin at risk?
Well, the concerns are those I've just alluded to in my statement. There is much greater chance for human error. The ballots, the relevant statutes give no standards or objectives to the canvassing boards as to how they are to be guided in determining voter intent. It can be a very, very subjective process. And indeed, as I think I pointed out in the statement, the potential for mischief in a situation that is not an ordinary vote counting situation. When votes are cast in an ordinary presidential election, the people receiving those votes have no idea, of course, that their actions could affect the result. This is an extraordinarily unique situation. Now, let me make this very clear to everyone here. We are not alleging that there would be any mischief. And hopefully, if this should go forward, there will be none, and we will have our people there. But the potential is there, and the big point here that I hope everyone will keep in mind is that the nation has left manual counting in favor of machine counting because it is more fair, it is more objective, and it is less subject to human error and potential mischief. Now back, well, you had the, excuse me, this gentleman had the second question, and I cut him off. Go ahead. We are not doing that. We are preserving, in fact, the right to a constitutional process that has been traditionally followed in this country. That would be the effect, in fact, of this action. And what we are saying is there's been a vote, there has been a recount, and a third recount, which would be a manual recount, would be subject to all of the problems that I've outlined in my statement. Yes, sir.
Secretary Baker, all that may be true, but a Republican official said this morning that such a challenge is, quote, on shaky ground because under Florida law, the Democratic Party in Florida has 72 hours to ask for a hand recount, and the law apparently is very clear.
Well,
you say to those who say that you're not willing to go for a lawful recount and that you're afraid of what the outcome will be.
Well, we've gone for a lawful recount, and we're not afraid of the outcome, and we're quite willing to say here today, as we have over the course of the past several days, that we're willing to say that if we should lose the count of the overseas absentee ballots, it's over. We lose, and we're willing to respect the result, assuming that count has been carried out in a proper manner. So we've been very forthcoming about that from the very beginning. What we don't want is yet a third recount, a manual recount, if you will, that is subject to all of the deficiencies that I've just outlined here for you.
Representative of the Bush campaign will be there during this hand recount, and why do you have a problem with that?
Look, there are no standards. Yes, it is true. There will be representatives of both campaigns there, but there are no standards to guide the subjective intent of the electoral board, or the canvassing board, as you call it here in Florida. And they can divine the intent of the voter. They can say, well, I think the voter meant this, and they don't have to show any basis for that whatsoever, or any evidence for that. Yes, right here.
Continue any sort of legal action on the part of the Democrats simply prolong what needs to be done. And you question whether or not this should not end as soon as possible for the best interest of the nation. Isn't this challenge that you're issuing today prolonging that and going against what is the lawful request for a manual vote?
I would hope it's not prolonging it. I don't think it's prolonging it. As I said in my statement, if the Gore campaign will simply join us, acknowledge that the votes in Florida have been counted, they have been recounted, the overseas absentees are to be counted, and agree with us that subject to the count of those overseas absentee ballots, they too will respect the result like we've said we will, the lawsuit's gone. It will be dismissed. It will be.
Then, if they continue these legal pursuits, whether it's an individual lawsuit questioning whether someone was able to rightfully vote, or any other legal remedies that they may consider to pursue, is it your suggestion, sir, that in some way this is unpatriotic or unstatesmanlike?
No, I haven't said that. I've just pointed out to you the fact that their supporters have filed 8 lawsuits challenging the result. And so we were not the first to file a lawsuit. Their supporters filed 8 lawsuits challenging the result. And I have also said, I hope very clearly, that if they would simply say, yes, we will respect the result of the count of the overseas absentee ballots like you've said you will, we'll wait those 6 days, and they'll wait those 6 days. Whatever that shows, that will determine the winner in Florida. This action we file would be dismissed. Yes, sir.
Are you aware of any discussion between high-level members of the Gore campaign in Florida and members of the campaign board? If so, are there any issues?
I'm not aware of any discussions between high-level officials of the Gore campaign and canvassing board members. No, I'm not. So that's the way I would answer your question. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, we have, should you desire to have it, we have copies here of the action as well as copies of my statement. Thank you all very much.
Former Secretary of State James Baker, the Bush campaign's lead person in Florida, speaking with reporters, confirming what CNN has been reporting all this morning, that the Bush campaign will file suit or has filed suit in federal court in Florida to stop the 3rd recount of this election in Florida, the so-called hand recount, the previous 2 recounts having been done by machine. In essence, Mr. Baker is saying that a human recount would be subject to many more errors, the potential for mischief much greater, he said, and machines, he said, are neither Republicans nor Democrats. He asked the Gore campaign to join us, as he put it, and the lawsuit will be gone in acknowledging the current recount, the machine recount, cognizant of the fact that absentee votes from overseas will, in fact, be factored into all of this. There was a preemptory comment from the Gore camp before this news conference even occurred, based on the reports that have been coming out about what Mr. Baker would say. Campaign spokesman Doug Hattaway with the Gore camp saying, we believe the hand count should go forward. There is absolutely no reason why people's votes should not be counted by human beings. These recounts are authorized by local officials. They're going to court to stop local officials from counting their citizens' votes. We support the decision to have full, fair, and accurate count. So the plot thickens. Kira?
And to get more into that thickening plot, Greta Van Susteren, our legal analyst, joins us now from Florida. She's been listening in. Greta, an interesting point that Mr. Baker made, and that is, if there were to be another recount, there are no standards of guidance for the canvassing board for voter intent. Could you go a little bit more into that and explain what that means?
Well, Kira, obviously Mr. Baker is an advocate for his position. Of course, there were times when we did recounts before we even had machines to count ballots. I mean, that is a piece of advocacy, just as the statement that was just read was a piece of advocacy by the Democrats. What's interesting here is that the federal injunction has been filed, and what the standards are to get an injunction are twofold. One is they must demonstrate irreparable harm if the vote goes forward, and secondly, that they're likely to prevail on the merits. It's a very high standard. I have no idea how a federal judge is going to look at this and what decision is going to be made, but what the Republicans want to do is they want to stop a manual recount in the counties that are predominantly Democratic counties, because when you have manual recounts, when you have recounts, the votes always go up. And by theory, if the person who is leading in the county, if you have a highly Democratic county, in all likelihood, they're going to go up higher for Vice President Gore because he's a Democrat. so what they're trying to do is to stop this manual recount in these counties. Now, it is indeed true. When you manually recount a ballot, there is a lot of subjectivity in it. Suppose that you have two blocks and you have a little dash between them to indicate the mark or a little mark to indicate how you vote. The question is, how do you know? How do you know which way the voter intended to vote? Now, sometimes it might be quite obvious because it might be very close to the box, but these are the types of subjective issues that trouble the Bush campaign, and that's what they're trying to do, is stop that. But on the flip side, we've had lots of manual recounts in this country, and we've certainly had manual recounts long before machinery, but it certainly is an intriguing legal issue.
Mm-hmm. Greta, what would be the chance of finding a judge? I mean, it's a holiday weekend. Does this have to go into emergency mode?
Oh, you can always find a federal judge. That's very easy. In fact, on weekends, holidays, there's always someone who's in charge of being an emergency judge. There's a federal courthouse here in Palm Beach. We're trying to find out if it's filed actually here in this federal courthouse, but I'll tell you that that's not a problem. They wake up judges in the middle of the night to handle emergency matters. So finding a judge on a Saturday is not hard. In fact, in all likelihood, the lawyers tipped off the federal court last night that they would be intending to file this just to put the judge on notice so the judge can take a quick look at it. So that's not a problem. Finding the federal judge isn't a problem.
Greta, how long could this go? I mean, when the heck are we ever going to find out who our next president is?
You know, if I knew that answer, Kira, I tell you, I wouldn't be sitting here before the cameras. I'd be picking lottery numbers someplace, and I'd be a very rich person. I mean, nobody really knows. Look, this is unprecedented. We have never seen anything like this. We have sort of the merger. First, we had a political event, and now we have a court event. We have both sides having gone to court. The Republicans today in federal court. Yesterday, they started court actions by sort of state representatives in New Mexico. We've had Democratic voters here in the state of Florida filing lawsuits. I mean, there are so many shots being fired across the respective bows of their ships that it is amazing how many court battles. And to answer your question very succinctly, I don't know, but I'll tell you one thing, nobody else does either.
Very safe answer. Is there a reasonable end?
I hope that there's a reasonable end for the benefit of the American voters, and I can only say we shall see. But I can tell you one thing, the plot thickens, and there's going to be a lot of confusion, a lot of legal action, a lot of legal pleadings. There's also got to be evidence taking. I mean, we don't know what the facts are. You know, at this point, it's never been established exactly what the facts are. We have no idea the condition of the ballots. We have no idea why 19,000 ballots in this county were thrown out. We have no idea why there's double voting. At this point, we only have lots of suspicion, and there's a lot. We have to get to the bottom of the facts. And while there are a lot of people who hate litigation and hate courts, at least in the courtroom, we do have standards. You have to present proof, and hopefully that may be one safe resolution. But at this point, we simply don't know. We have lots of intriguing legal issues, lots of intriguing political issues, but we also have an enormous amount of uncertainty.
Greta, is there an absolute legal deadline where this has to be wrapped up? I mean, is it possible that this could go into next year?
You know, it's not, by statute, on December 18th, the electors from the Electoral College are supposed to meet and vote. And, you know, that's when we expect that the next significant event in this election should occur. It's unclear. I mean, I could give you all sorts of bar question hypotheticals. For instance, suppose that down here in Florida, that for whatever reason, that the election is not certified, so they can't have the Electoral College members here in the state of Florida vote. Suppose, though, that they allow it to go forward, hypothetically, on December 18th. And the question then is, who has the majority of the Electoral College votes? Of course, then it would be Gore, because there's so many Electoral College votes here in Florida. But those are simply hypotheticals. And the reason that, as a legal analyst, I keep giving you hypotheticals is because when we examine these issues, we look at precedent, we look at history and see how it was handled before. But we don't have that here. We can't look back and see how it was handled 4 years ago, or 8 years ago, or even 100 years ago. This is so new. This is brand new, something we've never seen before. So we can't even begin to predict the future on how it'll unravel.
All right, Greta, this could be a crazy question, and forgive me if it just seems so crazy, but is it possible that President Clinton will have to remain president even into the next year?
Well, he's certainly going to remain president until January 20th, which is inauguration date. The question is if he can't run for another term. I know that's a very technical question. I don't know the answer to that, Kira. I wish I did, and maybe by the next time I get on the air, I'll try to figure that one out. But it certainly is another, at least it's another, maybe another bar examination question. Maybe another bar exam question.
There you go. All right, Greta Van Susteren, thank you so much. And we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Sony Digital 8 Handycam camcorder. Advanced features, amazing digital clarity.
I can't take it anymore. I need a break from the fans and the paparazzi. I'm going to Priceline.com and planning the ultimate vacation. Top shelf airline tickets, classy rental cars, swanky hotel room. And then when this gig is over, I'm gone, baby. I'm gone.
Buying a carpet deep cleaner can be confusing. You may think they have steam or heat the water, but in fact, they don't. Presenting the Bissell Pro Heat, the only upright deep cleaner with a built-in heater, which makes the hot tap water up to 25 degrees hotter, so it cleans better than all its competitors. Bissell, we mean clean. Now get the improved cleaning power of real heat in a handy portable. Introducing the Bissell Little Green Pro Heat.
There comes a time in every man's life.
Welcome to the family, Jack.
When he must choose between doing what he's told.
Don't rock the boat, Jack.
And doing what is right.
If we don't get this company on the net, we're dead.
You're a loose cannon, Jack. You have no idea what you're up against.
In a world where you're only as good as your technology.
We're going with Sun.
I'm watching you, Jack. Loose cannon is my middle name.
Critical Decision. A .com production.
Live pictures this morning. The place is Arlington Cemetery, the specific location, the Tomb of the Unknowns. President Clinton is due to be there to remember veterans on this Veterans Day, which began on the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, originally known as Armistice Day, now Veterans Day. And we will be bringing you that ceremony when it happens live. Let's return to our political discussion in the meantime. CNN's Patty Davis is with the Gore camp, which was in Nashville and decamped to Washington to the vice presidential residence. And there was some comment coming out prior to the James Baker news conference, Patty, based on the reports that CNN and some others had that Mr. Baker would in fact be filing that suit. Have you heard anything further?
We just got some new comment that comes from Doug Hattaway, the national spokesman for the Gore campaign. Mr. Hattaway saying, quote, the hand counts are provided for under Florida law, and local Florida election officials decided to do that hand count. In addition to that, earlier, Hattaway had told us that the Bush campaign is going to federal court to stop local officials from counting ballots from their own citizens. They say that's unprecedented. It's not fair, and they want a full and accurate account of this. In the meantime, as you said, Vice President Al Gore is back here in Washington, along with his campaign chairman, William Daley, and the official observer for the Gore campaign of this recount in Florida, Warren Christopher. They were briefing the vice president yesterday about what was happening down in Florida. Now we are told by Doug Hattaway, in terms of that Baker deal, the deal that he's offering, if you accept those overseas absentee ballots, the final count, when that comes out Friday or over the weekend, we will drop our court actions. Mr. Hattaway saying we have no response to that at this point. They expect to formulate one at some point today. So we expect more reaction out of the Gore campaign here in Washington, perhaps definitely out of Tallahassee, where many of the spokespeople still are located. Miles?
Well, there's a fine line here, Patty, between what is the legal authority that the campaign might have and the public relations game, and how all of these legal maneuvers might be perceived. If the Gore campaign insists on a hand count, in spite of what Mr. Baker has said, they run the risk of being viewed as sore losers. Is that something that is being actively discussed there?
That's a good question. If it is, they're not discussing that with us. I know that the political analysts, the political pundits are saying that, in fact, that could be the case, that he's viewed as a sore loser in this. And if he was to win the presidency, perhaps out of a hand count, this legal back and forth, that it could be damaging to him on Capitol Hill, make it more difficult if Vice President Gore was to assume the presidency. But those are the words from the political analysts, the political pundits. No word on that specifically, inside talk from the Gore campaign on that front, Miles.
And, of course, one other point before we get away here, the fact that Mr. Baker's deal included the overseas absentee ballots. Historically, those ballots are predominantly Republican votes, are they not?
In 1996, in fact, there were about 2,000 of those that came into Florida. 55% around that went for Bob Dole, who was the Republican candidate for president at the time. So, but we just don't know. You just don't know which way those will go. The Bush campaign has said that it's pretty confident, though, being with the past history, at least in the last election, for those ballots, that many of them would go to George W. Bush. But we just don't know. And the Gore campaign really wants to wait for those to come in because they're saying it's just not fair to call the election at this point, concede the election. There's no way that they're going to do that until they know the actual physical results of Florida. Miles?
All right, CNN's Patty Davis with the Gore camp in Washington. Kira.
And with the Bush camp is Tony Clark. He's on the phone from Austin, Texas. Tony, any more information, any response from the Bush camp since this press conference with former Secretary James Baker?
Well, Kira, this all began with a conference call last night between the governor, Jim Baker, and Republican attorneys, and the feeling was that such a count, this hand count, was unnecessary because there have already been 2 machine counts. But as Greta said, there's also concern because when you have a hand count, traditionally those counts result in more votes being counted. And usually a majority of those votes go to the person who led in that county. In this case, it was Vice President Al Gore. And so the attorneys, the Republican attorneys, believe there is the real likelihood that if you can count the votes in those 4 Democratic counties, that Al Gore will end up leading the vote in Florida. Then the Bush campaign is forced into the prospect of asking for their own hand count in counties where the governor, Texas governor, was the leader. And they are in a bad position with that because they've objected to hand counts by Gore, but that may be what they have to do. And so it could end up that this whole state would be hand counted.
Governor Bush, is he still continuing to assume the presidency right now?
Right now, he and Dick Cheney are meeting at the ranch this weekend. They're talking about potential cabinet members in the future because, according to the Bush folks, they want to be ready on day 1 if he becomes president.
Tony Clark from Austin, Texas. Thank you. Miles?
All right, stay with us here on CNN. We are going to take a quick break, and we should tell you we are standing by for an event, a solemn event at Arlington National Cemetery. These are some live pictures. You see the podium there. The president will be conducting a ceremony to honor this Veterans Day at the Tomb of the Unknowns, and we will bring that to you live, and we will also, of course, continue our discussion on Election 2000. So please stay with us.
Tonight on a special edition of Reliable Sources, join Howard Kurtz as he talks with news legends Dan Rather and Sam Donaldson about Election 2000. Tonight, 6:30 Eastern.
The action, the excitement, the glory. The NFL on ESPN. From our studio shows to a full season of ESPN Sunday Night Football. ESPN has the best in-depth coverage of the NFL on and off the field. The NFL is on ESPN.
Brought to you by your Les Schwab Tire Center. We're more than a tire store. Batteries, alignment, shocks, brakes, and custom wheels.
If you're in the market for an RV, check out Gresham RV Center, your Holiday Rambler headquarters. Gresham RV will save you money on a new Holiday Rambler. Shop in Gresham. The selection has never been better. Gresham RV offers you an award-winning service department, factory-trained techs, and a large parts and accessory store, open 7 days a week. Get the lowest price and the best service on your new Holiday Rambler. We're easy to find, just 3.5 miles off I-84 East, exit 16. Gresham RV Center, serving Portland and Vancouver for 20 years.
When Wall Street's closing bell rings, the action for investors is just starting, and CNBC's Market Wrap covers it all.
Wild day. We have our market reporters positioned all over.
Earnings reports.
We'll let the numbers do the talking now.
Extended trading hours.
Are there buying opportunities out there?
And those big announcements that come only when the markets close.
You better believe it's not over yet.
Market Wrap, your guide to investing on both sides of the bell.
Brought to you by D.A. Davidson, experts in wealth management for over 60 years.
Can't find the right car for you? Shop VHIX.com. Want access to 500,000 used cars? VHIX.com. Lease or purchase? VHIX.com. Or do side-by-side comparisons? VHIX.com. Need to find the right local dealer? VHIX.com. Find the right car for you. VHIX.com. Roadmap to the automotive world.
CNN in Time, the Sunday news magazine, 9 Eastern, only on CNN.
Welcome back to CNN Saturday Morning. We are preempting our CNN Travel Now show to bring you pretty much a historical time in our election process. We've been bringing you all kinds of new information and updates on the recount in Florida. We have correspondents all over joining us to discuss the issues at hand.
It is noontime, or it's 11 a.m. on the East Coast and 8 a.m. out on the West Coast. For those of you wanting to set your clock, that's Kara Phillips. I'm Miles O'Brien. We're glad to have you with us, and the plot is thickening. The twists, the turns, the bumps in the road on this Saturday after the election 2000 continue. Just a few moments ago, live here on CNN, former Secretary of State James Baker, the point person for the Bush campaign in Florida as this contested election continues on, issued a statement before reporters that the campaign will be filing suit in federal court to try to stop the third recount in that contested state. CNN's Bill Hemmer is in Tallahassee. He's updating a story that is unfolding very rapidly and has been all week. Bill?
Yeah, Miles, on a rather chilly morning here in northern Florida, the heat is being turned up hour by hour. James Baker, as you just heard a short time ago, says the Bush campaign will go to court to try and end what they consider constant and consistent counts and recounts. Here's James Baker from a few moments ago.
The manual vote count sought by the Gore campaign would not be more accurate than an automated count. Indeed, it would be less fair and less accurate. Human error, individual subjectivity, and decisions to, quote, determine the voter's intent, close quote, would replace precision machinery in tabulating millions of small marks and fragile hole punches. There would be countless opportunities for the ballots to be subject to a whole host of risks. The potential for mischief would exist to a far greater degree than in the automated count and recount that these very ballots have already been subjected to. It is precisely, ladies and gentlemen, for these reasons that our democracy over the years has moved increasingly from hand counting of votes to machine counting. Machines are neither Republicans nor Democrats, and therefore can be neither consciously nor unconsciously biased. There are not even any procedures or standards to govern this third and selective vote count. A manual recount permits the electoral boards in each county in Florida to determine the intent of the voter without setting forth any standards at all for deciding that intent.
Again, James Baker a short time ago indicating the Bush campaign intent to go to court and to stop the continued recounts here in the state of Florida. Two rather significant moments occurring in that briefing as well. Yesterday, when James Baker met with reporters, he came this close, ever so close to asking Al Gore to concede in this race, and only the second sentence he says, "We urge, based on these results, the Gore campaign to accept the finality of this election." More coming up shortly. Back to Miles, though, for developing story out of Washington.
All right, Bill, we will return to the story there in Tallahassee, but we want to take you live to Washington, Arlington National Cemetery. President of the United States having laid a wreath in the Tomb of the Unknowns on this Veterans Day. President of the United States, Bill Clinton, a moment of silence for those who have served and paid the ultimate sacrifice for the freedoms which are at the very heart of our discussion all this morning. CNN's Kelly Wallace is there amid the crowd. Kelly, worth pointing out here, to bring it back to the now and the present, that the President is embarking on a trip to Vietnam that has many veterans a bit rankled. All throughout his nearly 8 years now.
As the presidential party makes its way into the amphitheater, the United States...
I'm sorry, Kelly. Throughout these 8 years, he's had well, to say the least, a rough road with veterans, hasn't he?
Absolutely. He definitely has had somewhat of a difficult relationship with veterans and with the nation's military. But as you said, he will be embarking on this journey. It will be the first visit by a president to Vietnam since the end of the Vietnam War. Obviously, the president facing some controversy because of the positions he took as a graduate student and a college student opposing the war, and then there was the controversy over whether or not he, in fact, avoided the draft. But the president saying that from the beginning of his administration until now, he has worked on normalizing relations with the country based on progress made in the accounting of those missing in action. The president citing lots of progress that has led to more normal relations with the country. The president saying, though, that the country still needs to have closer and more cooperation. But the president saying that he hopes this trip will embark on a new chapter in the relationship between the U.S. and Vietnam. Certainly not ever closing the door on the Vietnam War, but certainly the president wanting to, Miles, look forward on a relationship between these two countries.
Yeah, perhaps not closing the door on the Vietnam War, but certainly opening the doors to some economic possibilities. Vietnam on the cusp of, well, a new economic reality. I know the president wants to encourage that.
Absolutely, and certainly what the two countries have done is basically normalizing trade relations between the two countries. Basically, the president trying to encourage Vietnam to basically embrace globalization, expanding trade with not just the United States, but other countries around the world. Obviously, the president believing that that will certainly improve the economic climate in that country. It will also, in the view of the United States, lead to more human rights freedoms and religious freedoms in that country. So definitely trade will be a big topic of conversation, as well as the focus on human rights and religious freedoms, Miles.
CNN's Kelly Wallace, Arlington National Cemetery on the other side of the Potomac today. They are breaking ground on a memorial which some would say is way past due. That is a memorial for those who served in World War II. Some 400,000 Americans killed in that war. CNN's Kathleen Koch is there for the groundbreaking of this particular memorial on the Mall. Kathleen?
This is where we were when the bomb hit us.
Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. 19-year-old Tony DiLorenzo saw the attack begin from the deck of the USS Honolulu.
I saw the battleships burning. Big black smoke just boiling over.
DiLorenzo displays his war memorabilia proudly, but others put away such memories.
I wrote a note when I sent this to my parents. Says, this is the snarl I used to scare the Jerrys.
Richard Malloy's platoon was surrounded by German troops New Year's Day 1945 as the Battle of the Bulge raged to the north. He and one other man survived.
You did what you were supposed to do, which was fire your gun in the direction of the enemy. And so I did. When we got out of there, why, there were bodies all over.
Tracy Sugarman didn't talk about the war for 50 years until his wife unearthed battlefront sketches he'd mailed home. They're now in a book. One details the attempted rescue of the crew of a U.S. ship sinking off the Normandy coast 2 weeks after D-Day.
We were racing out in this storm trying to rescue them and rescuing almost none of them. It was like a nightmare in slow motion. It was terrible. And until I made these drawings, I was having a real hard time.
As World War II veterans see their ranks dwindle, they debate how best to remember their war.
And that was a defining moment when all Americans came together.
Many support the new World War II memorial to be built on the National Mall.
Our memory will be there in black and white.
We won a war that had to be won, and it couldn't have been won without us.
But others doubt the practical value of such granite structures.
I think they're irrelevant. I mean, it's nice, but I don't think it's important, in quotes. There's nothing you can learn about war except that it's something you shouldn't do.
And as you can hear, they are ready for a sentimental journey here on the mall at the site of the memorial. Hundreds of veterans have lined up for more than a block getting to the site. There are expected to be about 3,500 of them joining in the ceremony. There is controversy about this location. Some believe it's very fitting that the memorial to World War II, the defining moment of the 20th century, should be front and center on the U.S. Mall, but there are several veterans groups who believe that this will obstruct the view, the sweeping vista from the Washington Monument here before me and the Lincoln Memorial behind me. So they have filed a lawsuit in court, and they're trying to stop the site process, stop the construction. That's actually why when they have the groundbreaking here today, they're not going to actually be digging their shovels into the ground. There's actually a very long flower box where the president and others will be turning the dirt to symbolically get the construction of this memorial underway, but it is still up in the air, held in check by that lawsuit. Kathleen Cope reporting live on the National Mall. Miles?
Kathleen, I hope you can hear me over the 1940s tunes there. Okay, she's nodding. You know, it's kind of unfortunate that after all this time and with the veterans growing very old, that there's a political controversy over its placement. I don't think anybody or very few people would begrudge them, as you say, a good piece of real estate there in the mall.
Miles, the issue came up really back in '97. That's when the protest initially began about this, because a lot of people were not aware that this was the site that was selected. And many have said that, yes, indeed, the veterans deserve the memorial, that this is perhaps the right memorial, but the wrong place. Some would like to see it moved just slightly to the north here, to an area called Constitution Gardens, not too far from here, beyond the row of elm trees. But it's a very difficult thing for the veterans to deal with. Those who oppose it say that they don't want their legacy to be the defacement of the mall, of the National Mall. Others, though, again, say that this is exactly the spot for it, that it was such an important point in U.S. history when the entire nation came together. And this memorial also does honor civilians. It honors the achievement and commitment of the entire country. So it is a tough moment, though.
All right, Kathleen Koch, who is at the, well, they're not going to break ground, but we'll call it a groundbreaking ceremony anyway. Thank you very much. And we should remind our viewers that we're expecting some comments from the president, who is across the Potomac at Arlington National Cemetery. There you see the crowd waiting for the president to make some remarks on this, the 11th day of the 11th month, what began as Armistice Day and now is known to all of us, National Holiday, Veterans Day, a day when we choose to pause and remember those who have paid big sacrifices for all of our freedoms. Kira?
Well, within the past hour, the Republican Party did announce that it will seek a federal injunction to stop the ballot recount, rather, that is underway in Florida. And CNN's Bill Hemmer is in Tallahassee. He's been following this developing story. And Bill, why don't you recap for us where we are at the moment and any updated information?
Indeed, certainly we'll try, Kira. It's a lot to keep track of, but if you can follow me now, this is the latest shot that's been fired in the current race for the White House. James Baker, the former Secretary of State, just about 30 minutes ago, came out and indicated that the Bush campaign now will go to court to try and stop what they consider consistent recounts of the vote here in the state of Florida. Yesterday, James Baker came before reporters and came very close to asking Al Gore to accept the finality of the vote in Florida. Today, he went that extra step, saying, quote, "We urge the Gore campaign to accept the finality of this election," subject, of course, to the overseas absentee ballots that still have until next Friday, November 17, to be counted and tabulated in this race. The other thing that James Baker talked about for the second day in a row was his own personal experience 24 years ago. He was working with President Gerald Ford in 1976 in his very close race with President Carter. He said the race in Ohio came down between 6,000 or 7,000 votes inside of a room. Many people urged President Ford to challenge those results, but in James Baker's words, Ford did not do that because he wanted to do that, in other words, for the good of the country, in James Baker's words. Now, The hand recount, though, here in the state of Florida, though, is absolutely legal. And indeed, that hand count does continue today in 2 counties. Volusia County started just a few hours ago. It's also believed in Palm Beach County in the southeastern portion of Florida that a hand recount with a small sample will continue today as well. Now, it could take hours, if not days, for those recounts to be completed. We had been given an earlier estimation that as long as 14 hours before that could be completed, but again, there's no solid indication when that might happen. Now, on Monday, another county, Broward County, will start its own hand recount, and then also possibly Miami-Dade may have their own the first part of next week, but again, that is very inconclusive at this point. What is conclusive, though, the latest shot has been fired. The Bush campaign says they are ready to go to court to try and stop what they consider consistent recounts here in the Sunshine State. Kira?
Bill, you also mentioned Duval County earlier on and the impact Jacksonville, Florida might have on all this. What's the latest from there?
I told you it was confusing. Well, here's another twist for you, Kira. Late last night, a local report came out that indicated Duval County in northeastern Florida, that's near the city of Jacksonville, they indicate 22,000 votes were not counted in that place because people double punched again for the presidential race. Now, that ballot, we are told, was not this butterfly ballot that they use in Palm Beach, but rather it had presidential candidates, 10 of them, spread out over 2 pages. They say as a result, it's possible people were confused there and double punched for the presidency. In Duval County, though, unlike Palm Beach County, George Bush won the race there by greater than 44,000 votes. What happens there, though, again, is a wide open question, but it's believed by the Bush campaign that if they were to lose votes in Palm Beach County, it's possible they could take their legal fight to Duval County. In the words of James Baker, to what end and where does it end? At this point, we don't know. Kira?
Yeah, none of us know. That's why we'll continue the coverage. Bill Hemmer from Tallahassee, thank you. We will check back in with you. We're going to move over now to West Palm Beach, where John Zarella is standing by. He's in the middle of the area with all the controversy going on. What's the word there now, John? What's the latest?
Well, that certainly is right, Kira. Well, just a few minutes ago, we talked with Tucker Eskew, who is the Chief Communications Director for the Bush-Cheney camp. And he did go ahead and confirm that the Republican Party has filed for that injunction in the Southern District of Florida. They filed in Broward County. That's in Fort Lauderdale. Now, what that means is most likely they want to make sure that they can stop that hand count that is expected to take place in Broward County on Monday. What you can see behind me is the room where the hand count is supposed to be starting here sometime this morning. We thought it would be well underway by now. What we are being told is we are waiting for the ballots to arrive. There are a lot of the ballots from the 3 precincts that will be hand counted here that were in Delray Beach, Florida, part of Palm Beach County, and that a representative of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, accompanied by the sheriff's office officials here, have gone down there to get those ballots to bring them back here to hand count them. How they're going to do it? Very interesting. They're going to set up 12 piles, 10 piles, one for each of the candidates, the presidential candidates from the different parties, and 2 additional piles, one for undercounts, one for overcounts. Undercounts, people who didn't punch any hole for a presidential candidate. Overcounts for people who punched more than 1 hole for presidential candidates. It could, as Bill said, take 10, 12, 14 hours, and we were expected to be started at least 2 hours ago. Hasn't started. Could be well into the night here, Kira, before this is all said and done as far as the hand count, which represents about 4,600 ballots here in Palm Beach County. If the Democrats get some sort of relief from this and see that there were anomalies, major anomalies, they could go back and then ask for a recount, a hand recount of all of Palm Beach County if they see significant change in the numbers based on the 4,300. So, a lot happening here in Palm Beach County, a lot to happen in federal court, we are told, in Fort Lauderdale, if the Republicans can get that injunction from a federal judge. Kira?
John, I was reading that, and tell me if this number is correct, if you've heard this also, no presidential candidate was punched on about 10,000 ballots. Have you heard
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
That's exactly correct. Yeah, 10,000. No ballot was punched for the presidential candidate on 10,000. A lot of those out of the 3 precincts in question. Kira?
Now, are they saying this is faulty machines? Have they given a reason?
Yeah, they do believe that perhaps the machine did not take into account the ballot. It's called Chad. And so what they're doing here is a couple of things. One's called the sunshine test. If you can hold the ballot up to the light and see that there was a hole punched, then it's going to count. Or if 3 of the 4 corners on the ballot were punched in a particular punch hole, it will count. So this is one of the reasons, again, why the Democrats want this, because if you eyeball these ballots, you can take a real close look at whether or not they were punched, and one reason why the Republicans don't want this hand count. Kira?
John, how is the mood there right now? I'm looking behind you and seeing that people appear to be pretty calm, but what do you sense?
Well, you know, it's interesting. You've sensed all along that there are people here from the different representations, a lot of local citizens coming here, and what we hear from all of them is that they want democracy to work. That's what the people are coming up to us. They're coming up to us, grabbing us, saying, we want democracy to work. We don't care whether it's Republican or Democrat. The world is getting the wrong impression of us. This is not about Republicans versus Democrats. It's about democracy working and about our vote counting. And the people here do not believe that their vote counted because of the anomalies in the ballot. So a real sense here of groundswell and a growing groundswell of support by local people here for the right thing to be done. And it looks right now as if it's going to end up in the courts to be decided. Kira?
John Zarrell in West Palm Beach. We'll be checking back with you. Thanks. Miles?
Of course, there is the court of public opinion to consider. CNN's Patty Davis in Washington. She is with the Gore camp. And Patty, we saw the James Baker news conference just about an hour ago now, live here on CNN, as he announced that lawsuit in federal court to try to stop the hand counting. I'm curious if we will be expecting to see any representatives of the Gore campaign on camera today.
That's a good question. They have said that they will either have a paper statement or they may go on camera at some point today. We're waiting for final word of that. But there was swift reaction from the Gore campaign. Even as James Baker was giving his press conference, Doug Hattaway was on the phone with us, the national spokesman for the Gore campaign, saying that his quote that hand counts are provided for under federal law, or Florida law, and local Florida election officials decided to do the hand count. Now on screen, in an earlier quote we got from Mr. Hattaway, these recounts, he said, are authorized by local officials. They're going to federal court, meaning the Bush campaign going to federal court to stop local officials from counting their own citizens' votes. We support a decision to have a full, fair, and accurate count. So swift reaction from the Gore campaign in response, however, to the James Baker deal that he was offering them. Basically, all right, you go ahead and agree with us that you'll accept the Friday absentee ballot count as the final count. You'll concede. You'll accept that at that point if you are the loser. The reaction from the Gore campaign at this point is no response. We're working on one. We'll get back to you on that. Miles?
Of course, this federal court injunction on the part of the Bush campaign, not the only legal skirmish underway. Some of the Gore supporters have filed suit, or are threatening to file suit at least, indicating they felt cheated out of their ability to vote for their candidate because of that confusion of the ballots down there in Palm Beach County. Has the Gore campaign taken any sort of official opinion on that, or are they trying to lay low on that one?
Well, William Daley the other day in a press conference in Tallahassee said that they're supportive of the lawsuits that are being filed in Palm Beach County. They say that indeed that the ballots were unfair. It's their opinion of their legal experts that these ballots were unlawful. They feel strongly about that, they're saying. So they're supportive of that. They are also saying in Broward County there were some 6,700 ballots there that weren't clearly punched for one candidate or another. There was an impression on one of those, the dot, the candidate line dots there, but the machine perhaps didn't pick that up. So they're saying that what we need now is a hand count. Machines can't pick everything up. We need to figure out exactly what voters intended here, and it's not fair to the American people if we don't figure out exactly what they intend to choose their president, Miles.
While they may agree with those suits, though, it seems as if, at least publicly, the Gore campaign would like to keep some distance between what appear to be independent voter efforts. And I noted that when it became known that the Bush campaign was going to file suit, the Gore campaign quickly said, well, you're the first to go to court. And I guess that's not precisely correct when you consider there have been suits filed sort of on their behalf.
Well, there's a big difference between the Gore campaign being supportive of lawsuits filed by individuals and the Gore campaign actually going to court itself. So I think that's the distinction there. That's true. They are coming out today and saying, listen, we're not the first ones to go to court. the Bush campaign is the one that's sending this into court. So there have been some major criticism of letting this go into the court system, that this should be settled without having to go there. So the Gore campaign seeking to push a little bit of that criticism back off onto the Bush campaign today.
All right. I guess the legal genie is out of the bottle. Patty Davis, live from Washington. Thanks very much. We'll be checking in with you later. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with more in just a moment.
I've been urging you to remember our name, Expedia.com. By repeating our name over and over, 6 million happy travelers have logged on to Expedia.com, leaving millions of you still missing out. Perhaps the problem is my irritating British accent. So for those of you who still don't remember Expedia.com, here goes.
Book the right trip at the right price at Expedia.
Only on CNN.
CNN.com is next, but first the headlines. The Bush campaign is going into federal court trying to stop hand counts of presidential votes in Florida. It claims the manual count is more prone to error than the previous machine recount.
There are no standards. Yes, it is true. There will be representatives of both campaigns there, but there are no standards to guide the subjective intent of the electoral board, or the canvassing board as you call it here in Florida. And they can divine the intent of the voter. They can say, well, I think the voter meant this, and they don't have to show any basis for that whatsoever, or any evidence for that.
We expect to get a response from the Gore campaign shortly. When that happens, we'll bring it to you live. Austrian officials say as many as 170 people have died on a cable-driven train fire inside a tunnel in the Austrian Alps. There are only 15 known survivors. I'm Gene Randall. More news at the top of the hour. Now, CNN.com.
Today on CNN.com.
Looking for a good therapist? Now you can log on and start emoting by modem.
There are so many people who will not go to a face-to-face counselor.
Internet therapy. It's growing, but not everyone thinks it's such a good idea.
Are you concerned that people could wind up in the wrong hands?
Absolutely. Would someone please answer the computer? More and more people are using the PC to call long distance.
You can just go straight to the website, key in your information, and start dialing.
Long distance online. It's free, it's easy, but just how good is it? A website that invades your privacy for a good reason.
This is the first site that actually shows you in a grassroots kind of way how the cookies are operating.
We'll show you how to have your cookie and eat it too.
CNN.com with Perry Peltz and James Hattori.
Welcome to CNN.com. I'm Perry Peltz. It's been 100 years or so since Sigmund Freud changed the way we think and talk about our fears and feelings. It's been about 5 years since the internet began to change the way we communicate with the world around us. And yes, that includes therapy. Freud might have thought the idea of treating patients over the internet was, well, crazy. But as you're about to see, a growing number of Americans are turning to the web for counseling. So let's go to the online couch for a little therapy.
Go ahead and get out
It's
there.
everywhere. You can watch it played out on national television on programs like the Sally Jesse Raphael Show.
I can have a job, I can be a lawyer, a doctor, a politician.
You can hear it discussed on the radio with the likes of psychologist Dr. Joy Brown.
If you're looking for help, I help you. If you're looking to make it his problem and change his behavior, I can't help you.
You can even watch it happening in the movies, like Analyze This.
I'm just trying to tell you about my feelings.
It is seeking answers to personal problems. Therapy has become part of the national consciousness in the United States, a country seemingly obsessed with self-discovery and therapeutic analysis. And with the internet, therapy is now just a click of the mouse away.
I felt very isolated.
5 years ago, Martha Ainsworth, a consultant for church organizations, needed help. She felt depressed.
I was in the midst of a huge career change. I was still grieving over the loss of one career and feeling very overwhelmed by my new career. And I didn't feel like I wanted to go through that alone.
But Martha Ainsworth was alone. She was always on the road, traveling for work. So instead of getting traditional therapy, she sought solace in cyberspace.
I was in a period when I needed a lot of emotional support, and all I had to do was go to my computer to get it. I didn't have to try to get it all out in a 45-minute time frame. If it was in the middle of the night and I felt like saying something, I could get up in my pajamas and sit down at the computer and pour my heart out.
Martha Ainsworth is not the only one reaching out online for help. According to a recent Harris poll, nearly 100 million adults like Ainsworth searched the web for mental health information last year. What was it, Martha, about the online therapeutic experience, if you will, that was able to make you start feeling better?
It was such a relief to have somebody listening. And even though he wasn't physically present with me, he was so present in my life that we exchanged emails almost daily. He was always there for me. He was always as close as my computer.
While the cost of online sessions can vary from $25 for a question to $50 to $90 for an hour of chat, mental health experts say cyber therapy is generally more affordable than traditional methods. In addition to cost, online marriage counselor Josh Cates says cyber therapy offers another significant advantage for many users: anonymity.
The online work is great because there are so many people who will not go to a face-to-face counselor.
Why do people seem to feel so comfortable confiding in a computer?
You just get right to the core of the matter. It seems to cut away all the defenses. Once I have an understanding of what their basic problem is, I can start asking questions back and forth about in what way, what works, what doesn't work for you, how long has this been going on, the same kinds of questions that we can do in actual counseling, but online.
I don't think that online therapy will ever substitute for face-to-face, in-person treatment. What was within her culture.
Dr. Lisa Melman is the Associate Clinical Professor of Psychiatry at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital in New York City. Why is it so important, Dr. Melman, from your perspective, to have a patient sitting right in front of you?
Therapists are trained to not only focus on the verbal as well as the direct nonverbal communications, the tears, the silences, those means of communication, but also to look for what is not being said.
According to the American Psychological Association, about a third of people who make a first appointment for traditional counseling never show up or never return after the first visit. So why isn't internet therapy considered a viable alternative? While there are reputable therapists online, critics like Dr. Melman say to beware. Are you concerned that people could wind up in the wrong hands?
Absolutely.
And how dangerous is that?
It can be very dangerous, certainly. One of our residents told me that he ran into a former friend from college who told him that he was conducting 20 hours a week of online therapy, and this gentleman had zero mental health training.
Because there are no national, much less international licensing laws for therapists, and the internet crosses all geographic boundaries, there are no safeguards for online imposters. One other question, that of privacy.
One of my colleagues said that the internet has the confidentiality or the privacy of a postcard, and I thought that that was a very apt analogy.
According to cyber psychologist Dr. John Grohol, your secrets are safer online than if you walked into a therapist's office. No insurance company or nosy neighbor knowing your business.
If you want to get psychotherapy or that kind of help, you have to go through a general physician to get authorization first to see a specialist, a psychiatrist or psychologist, or some other mental health professional. And what happens is that means that you have to go through your managed care or insurance company, and that becomes a part of your health record. And that sort of follows you throughout life.
E-therapists are also joining forces with online companies like HelpHorizons.com and HereToListen.com that claim to offer state-of-the-art technology, Fort Knox security, and offline office support. Ainsworth was so pleased with her experience, she started her own website, metanoia.org.
I felt it was really important to educate consumers about what they should be able to expect from a therapist that they worked with online. So I began the website to give people a heads up about what they should look for, and also to maintain a directory of therapists who were working online.
How much better, Martha, at the end of your experience did you feel?
Oh, so much better. My outlook on life is very different now than it was 5 years ago. I have really taken control of my life. I feel good about myself. These are things that are new to me.
And there are more new things in store for online therapy. Among them, face-to-face sessions via video conferencing. The technology is still a ways off, but it won't be long before you can lie on your own couch and start free associating.
Ahead on the dot. What's the latest buzz? Online long distance. We'll give you the pros and the cons. You make the call. All that and more when CNN.com continues. CNN.com is brought to you by Sun Microsystems. We're the dot in .com.
Hello once again, I'm Gene Randall at the CNN Center in Atlanta, returning to our story from the state of Florida and its question. The question it poses, when will this presidential election be over? We're expecting to hear shortly from the Al Gore presidential campaign on the situation with the hand count of votes in Florida. While we wait, let's go to Ken Gross in Tallahassee. He is a former federal election commissioner. How would you describe what's going on in Florida at this point?
Well, the legal battle, which is what's been going on, has now shifted to a different arena. We're now in federal court. Up until now, we thought we had a state court action based on the vagaries of the voting process and the recounting process, but it's been lobbed into federal court on constitutional grounds by the Bush campaign.
And what is the constitutional claim the Bush campaign is making?
They're making a couple of claims. The first claim is that it's based on the 14th Amendment, and that is that the right of the people who are voted is not being treated equally under this recount process because it's discretionary within the commissioners of each of the counties, the canvassing board. And what they're doing is they're saying that some are going to be counted differently than others. Some are going to maybe count the ones where the little tag is still holding and the others may not. And this disparity is a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. They're also claiming under the First Amendment that their right to, that their constitutional right to speech and the right to vote has been compromised as well.
Could a federal judge say this belongs in state court?
That is a possibility. The federal judge, they've been asked to issue a temporary restraining order, whichever judge gets this, and a preliminary injunction. And a federal judge could say, well, look, I think this is a state action, and I'll decline to do it. It is, in fact, within the discretion of this canvassing board. I'm going to let the state process run its course rather than intercede federally.
Now, what do you make of the strong argument made by former Secretary of State James Baker, and I'm using his term for the strong argument, that a hand count is simply too open to a risk of errors or mischief?
Well, I think as we've all learned here in the last couple of days, virtually any count is open to some error. Machines make errors. People make errors. I don't know that you can say that a hand count is less reliable than a machine count if, in fact, you have observers from both the Gore campaign and the Bush campaign there watching neutral people doing it.
Mr. Gross, do you think this is still a situation that is under control?
Well, I don't want to say it's out of control because you are now in a period of time, even before all the ballots have been totally counted, at least until next Friday. I think we're going to see a lot of maneuvering. It's democracy at work. It's the judicial system at work. But I don't want to say it's out of control. I think it's flying and it's fast and furious, but I think it's within process. It's within the processes permitted by the laws.
Mr. Gross, if you can stand by for a second, we'd like to shift to Tony Clark in Austin, Texas. He is covering the Bush campaign, and Patty Davis is in Washington covering the Gore side of things. Tony, I'm told that George W. Bush is expected to release a videotaped statement shortly. Any idea what's in it?
Well, he has gone to his ranch near Crawford, Texas. He's meeting there today with his running mate, Dick Cheney. Among the things they're doing is talking about what they would do with a potential Bush administration. They're going through that planning process, and what we expect to hear from him, he will be asked some questions about the injunction. Yesterday, when he was asked about Florida, he said he was going to defer to James Baker. He said Baker was his man on the scene in Florida and deferred all questions to him. But we may hear something today. The governor was involved in a conference call last night with Mr. Baker and some of the Republican attorneys. It was there during that call that they flushed out the potential up and downside of this injunction before moving ahead today. And so I think that's one of the things we're going to hear, and we may hear some more justification for moving ahead with the transition planning at this point, even though the election hasn't been decided.
And Patty Davis, we're also told to expect a statement from William Daley, Al Gore's campaign manager. Now, he has seemed to be very upset that the Bush campaign is going ahead with transition as if the results of this election were set in stone. I suppose we'll hear more about that today.
That's right. He's been saying it's not time yet to go ahead with that transition planning when we don't even have an official count from the state of Florida. We won't likely have that until the end of this coming week, possibly even into the weekend when those overseas absentee ballots come in. And the Gore campaign today is saying that there is absolutely no reason why the ballots should not be hand counted by human beings. There's no reason, they're saying, why that should take place. There's a senior official telling CNN that it shows arrogance on the part of Texas Governor George W. Bush and shows that campaign, the attempt by James Baker there to go to court to stop these hand counts actually shows, in effect, that they'll do anything to try to win this election.
Ken Gross, are you still with us in Tallahassee? Okay, Ken Gross, the former election commissioner, has left the scene. We'll return to the scene in just a moment.
There comes a time in every man's life.
Welcome to the family, Jack.
When he must choose between doing what he's told.
Don't rock the boat, Jack.
And doing what is right.
If we don't get this company on the net, we're dead. You're a loose cannon, Jack. You have no idea what you're up against.
In a world where you're only as good as your technology.
We're going with Sun.
I'm watching you, Jack.
Loose cannon is my middle name.
Critical Decision. A Dot.com production. Sony Digital 8 Handycam Camcorder. Advanced features, amazing digital clarity.
Online brokers have a game. It's called Who's Got the Cheapest Trade. So you spend time comparing prices instead of comparing resources. Judging how good the deal is rather than judging how good the information is. Investing isn't a game. You need to trade online with trusted advice and better information.
Let's go, sorry.
Morgan Stanley Dean Witter. Move your money. Get well connected.
Palm Beach County, Florida is at the center of this post-election storm, as we have said. John Zarella is in West Palm Beach. John, any sign of a start to the hand count effort there?
Not much of a sign at all to the hand count effort. We're still waiting for those ballots apparently to be brought up from Delray Beach. A member represented Republican Party, represented the Democratic Party, and the Sheriff's Office were down there to bring those ballots back. Meanwhile, members of the canvassing committee here are actually in the room where they're going to be doing the machine count, which is the one the Republicans had asked for, and they have been in there flipping through some paperwork and preparing to do a test run. What we can tell you is, of course, everyone knows that the Republican Party did ask for an injunction in U.S. District Court in Miami. Now, we know the judge that has gotten that and who will be dealing with the injunction. His name is Judge Donald Middlebrooks, well-respected. He was appointed to the bench by President Clinton, a Clinton appointee, in 1996. He's from the West Palm Beach area, was in a law firm, worked for a law firm here in the West Palm Beach area before being appointed to the bench, and his specialty is civil litigation. At one point in his career, he also worked for former Governor Ruben Askew a couple of decades ago here in Florida. So it is Judge Donald Middlebrooks in Miami who will be handling the injunction request by the Republican Party. Again, here, still waiting for the hand count to begin. The ballots have not arrived, at least that is our understanding, but they are apparently preparing to begin some sort of a count of at least the machine count. Now, of course, the hand count is of a selected 4 precincts, or 1% of the ballots, and that is in precincts where there was a very high number of no votes for president, no punch, and that's why the Democrats are apparently looking at those particular precincts, because no name was punched out for a presidential candidate. At least that's what the machine said, and they want to get a closer look at all of these because, at least in the Democratic Party's way of thinking, that is anomalous. Gene?
John, this federal judge is under a certain amount of time pressure, isn't he?
No question about it, but at the same time, he can say, I'm not going to do anything today, I'm not going to do anything tomorrow. But, in fact, in Broward County, on Monday, they are planning to begin a hand recount. And in Dade County, they're going to be voting on starting recounts on Tuesday. So he is under time frame as far as what the Republicans want as a stop to these hand counts. If he doesn't do it immediately and the hand counts begin and take place, well, then it becomes a moot point. So, yes, he will probably have to rule very quickly. It may not be timely enough to stop what happens here, but it certainly will probably be timely enough to stop what would likely happen in Broward County and perhaps even in Dade County. Gene?
Tony Clark, you still with us in Austin, Texas?
Absolutely.
Tony, do you suppose there is a general awareness level in the Bush camp that being the first side to go into federal court may have a certain negative ring to it with the American people?
Well, I'm not sure that this step going into federal court is the first step that really concerns them. It is the potential for other steps and other requests, because as we've been talking about this morning, if this hand count goes ahead and happens to follow the tradition that more votes end up being counted, and that happens because perhaps the ballots are stuck together, the little chad, the little square could have fallen out or not fallen out, punches didn't go all the way through, a variety of reasons, but more votes end up being counted. And usually what happens is the person who carried the county, the candidate who carried the county, gets the majority of those new votes, which could mean that Al Gore, Vice President Al Gore, ends up leading the Texas governor in Florida. So then the potential is for the Bush campaign to say, well, if this happened in 4 counties, maybe they ought to ask for hand counts in counties that the governor did well. And so that's the kind of slippery slope, as James Baker put it the other day, that they may be headed on that could bring out some negative reaction.
And, Tony, I should be clear about this. As the Bush camp is quick to say, there have been more than a half dozen legal actions on the Gore side of the equation, though not by the Gore campaign itself. So maybe people are a bit confused at this point about who filed first. Patty Davis in Washington.
I'm here.
What's the Vice President doing today?
Vice President is at his home in Washington, the Naval Observatory. At the moment, he is being visited by his campaign chairman, William Daley, and Warren Christopher, who is his official observer for the Florida recount. We are expecting William Daley to come out and give the press a briefing, a reaction to James Baker's call for an injunction, a stop to the counting of the hand ballots in Florida. We expect him not to be doing much this weekend. Last night, Vice President Gore was at a football banquet for his son, was not available to the press. He has not talked about this yet. We don't expect to see him today. He may go to church tomorrow, but not much of a public schedule this weekend. Gene?
Patty, any doubts that Gore, Warren Christopher, and Bill Daley are in fact putting together, carefully crafting the statement we expect to hear from Bill Daley shortly?
That would be my guess on that. I'm sure that Al Gore is having a very close hand in what they're crafting and going to put out momentarily. William Daley has been the lead person on this all week, and we continue to we think that he will be the one who will be coming out to give the news what the Gore campaign reaction is.
And Tony, meanwhile, as you pointed out moments ago, George W. Bush is carrying on as if there is a transition ongoing at the moment, isn't he?
Right. He left for his ranch last night, and he's spending the day today meeting with Dick Cheney. They're talking about a potential transition, what sort of administration they want to have, who they want in the administration, because, you know, regardless of who the candidates are, between Election Day and inauguration, there are, I think, 73 days, more or less, and so there is a time frame that has to be, you have to deal with. The governor said yesterday that he wants to be in a position, should he win the election, that they can hit the ground running on Inauguration Day. And to do that, they have to do some planning. In fact, this week was supposed to be a week, had everything gone the way the Bush campaign wanted, that they were going to name some cabinet members. Now all of that is on hold, and they're simply doing the planning process.
Meanwhile, we have word of an arrival in West Palm Beach, and here is John Zarella once again. John?
Yes, we understand, Gene, right now that from what we're being told, the ballots are arriving. That's those ballots from Delray Beach, Florida, that we had been awaiting. That's for the sampling of about 4,600 residents from 4 precincts. And with the ballots now coming in the door, that hand count can start to begin. What we think is that they will do is they'll bring them in now in the box. There's a lot of media scrambling to get a shot of those ballots coming in. And they represent 4 precincts, Gene, or 1% of the total vote. Now, again, as we've been saying, what they're going to do is lay out 12 piles. 1 pile for each of the 10 presidential candidates, 2 other piles, 1 for the overvote, 1 for the undervote. The undervote being people who didn't vote for any presidential candidate on their ballot, and the overvote for people who voted for more than 1 presidential candidate. So there will be 12 piles. The teams that will be working on that will be consisting of a representative of the Democratic Party and some other party. Doesn't necessarily have to be a member of the Republican Party. The ballots are now in the room, as you can see there on the shot we have. Ballots in the room, can begin the process of counting those ballots. Still, of course, a federal judge in Miami could halt all this at some point if he should rule that an injunction requested by the Republican Party has merit. He could halt this at some point, but for now, the ballot counting of those 4,600 is about to begin. And, Gene, the significance of the 4 precincts that were chosen here is that the Democrats do believe that there was an inordinately high number of no punches on those ballots. And so because of that, they believe that something may have been amiss with the machine, that there should be no way that those numbers, some in the high hundreds of no vote for a presidential candidate. So they believe that by this hand count, there will be a much more accurate, obviously, that's their opinion, view of what these people's real intent was, the voters, when they went to the booth. Gene?
John Zarella in West Palm Beach. Thank you, John. And once again, momentarily, we're expecting to hear from former Secretary of State Warren Christopher, the point man for the Gore campaign in the state of Florida and what's been happening there, and William Daley, Gore's campaign manager. At the top of the hour, in just 2 minutes from now, CNN Saturday. We'll see you then.
Closed captioning for this program has been provided by Verizon Communications.
Today on Evans, Novak, Hunt and Shields, Chairman of the Republican National Committee, Jim Nicholson, reacts to the Florida fallout. Today, 5:30 Eastern on CNN.
AT&T.
Pay-per-view.
The essence of survival, the desire to endure, the nature to succeed. Some get desperate, some crumble. In this world, only the mighty survive. The Rock, Triple H, The Undertaker, Stone Cold. The rules have changed.
WWF Survivor Series is in demand on AT&T Cable. Live November 19th at 5. Call now to order. The action, the excitement, the glory. The NFL on ESPN. From our studio shows to a full season of ESPN Sunday Night Football. ESPN has the best in-depth coverage of the NFL on and off the field. The NFL is on ESPN.
Brought to you by your Les Schwab Tire Center. We're more than a tire store. Batteries, alignment, shocks, brakes, and custom wheels.
If you've had previous credit problems, buying a car can seem like a red light that never changes. That's why Hillsborough Chrysler Plymouth and Jeep offers a unique program called New Start Financing. We guarantee to offer you financing regardless of your credit history. Payments are as low as $89 a month. So whether you've suffered through a job loss, repossessions, or even bankruptcy, we'll give you the green light to a new car at Hillsborough Chrysler Plymouth and Jeep. We guarantee to offer you financing. Call now.
They may dance, spark, even start fires. But the most frightening thing about down power lines is when they don't do anything except lie there and wait.
If you see any down power line, don't touch it. Just call us at Portland General Electric.
CNN in Time, the Sunday News Magazine, 9 Eastern, only on CNN.
The recount and the reverberations. The presidential cliffhanger is now dangling by a new thread, a legal challenge from the Republicans.
We would vigorously oppose the Gore campaign's efforts to keep recounting until it likes the result.
The presidential contenders remain on the sidelines, but unleash their lieutenants as the stakes climb in a court of law and the court of public opinion. From CNN Center in Atlanta, I'm Gene Randall. The political drama of the presidential race takes another turn. The Bush campaign has asked for a federal injunction to prevent hand vote recounts in Florida. We have CNN reporters posted at the various points of this developing story. John Zarella is in West Palm Beach, where a manual recount is due to get underway at any moment. Patty Davis is covering Al Gore in Washington, and Tony Clark is following the Bush camp. We begin with Tony in Austin, Texas. Tony?
Gene, we're told that there was a conference call last night between Governor George W. Bush, James Baker, his point man in Florida, and Republican attorneys, and they were trying to decide whether or not to go ahead with plans for this injunction, trying to stop the hand counting of ballots in 4 counties in Florida. They discussed the upside and downside. The initial feeling was that there was no need for a hand count. That's one of their arguments, that there have already been 2 machine counts, and so there is no need. It is unnecessary for there to be a hand count. In fact, James Baker said this morning that those 2 machine counts were perhaps more accurate, that there are no guidelines for handling, no specific guidelines for handling a hand count, and so that's one of the reasons that they've gone to federal court to try to stop it. One of the things also discussed last night, one of the concerns for the Republican attorneys in having a hand count, allowing a hand count to go forward, is that hand counts traditionally result in more votes being tallied. And usually what happens is the candidate who leads in a particular county gets a majority of those additional votes. And in these 4 counties in question, Vice President Al Gore was the candidate who led. So the potential result is that Al Gore would get more votes and could possibly take the lead in Florida. That puts the Bush campaign in a difficult position. They may then need to ask for hand counts in counties in which the governor led, in hopes of getting more votes in those counties. And that could send a signal that the entire state of Florida needs to have all of their votes hand counted. Today, the governor is at his ranch. He's meeting with his running mate, Dick Cheney. They are going over not only what's going on in Florida, but they're doing some of the planning, the transition planning. There is a set time. There are usually about 73 days between Election Day and inauguration to get the transition in order. The governor said yesterday that he wants to be in a position to hit the ground running on Inauguration Day if the results of the election end up with him winning the presidency, and that's what he plans to be doing this weekend at the ranch. Gene?
Tony Clark in Austin, Texas. Thanks, Tony. Now, reaction from the Gore campaign. I misspoke a moment ago. John King is in Washington with us this hour, and the vice president is there this weekend as well. John, give us the latest from there.
At this moment, Gene, the vice president meeting at his official residence, the Naval Observatory here in Washington, with Bill Daley, the chairman of the Gore campaign, his lead front person now in the fight for the Florida recount, as well as former Secretary of State Warren Christopher, the lead attorney involved in that effort. They are discussing a public statement we expect in the next 10 or 15 minutes to respond to what we heard today from the Bush side and to respond to that request for a federal injunction to block these recounts. The line from the Gore campaign so far is, what are they worried about? Why should they be worried about a manual recount of the vote? A manual recount, the Gore campaign points out, is clearly allowed under Florida state law and has been done several times in closely contested state elections. The Gore campaign saying, let's recount the votes, and they note that in the second recount that took place, the first recount, excuse me, the recount that took place after Tuesday's night's results showed the election so close that in Seminole County, Florida, the Gore campaign says some of those votes were counted by hand, and Governor Bush benefited from that because it's a Republican county. So their take on this is, let's have a hand recount in these counties. If the Bush campaign wants to request a hand recount in other counties, let them go ahead and do that. And then let's see what the final results are when you add up a hand recount and then, of course, those overseas absentee ballots, the certification for those due by next Friday. Now, as all this plays out, the vice president saying very little. We know behind the scenes he received a phone call yesterday from President Clinton telling him to hang in there, that he should certainly push ahead for a recount. Much pressure from Democrats to stop there, though, to not go into the courts and try to sue if the recount does not prove the vice president to be the winner. In public today, remarks from President Clinton, much more neutral than his private pep rally talk to the vice president. The president telling the American people in public today, let the system play out, just relax.
If ever there was a doubt about the value of citizenship and each individual's exercise of the freedom of citizenship to vote, this week's election certainly put it to rest. And if ever there was a question about the strength of our democratic institutions in the face of healthy and natural political argument, it has been answered by the measured response of the American people to these extraordinary events. We have a Constitution, we have a rule of law, we voted, and now the system is trying to figure out exactly what we said.
Obviously, a public relations battle playing out between the Gore and the Bush camps as this recount continues. The Gore campaign saying it is simply arrogant in their view that the Bush campaign would not want a recount to proceed in accordance with the state law in Florida. They're saying, this is the Gore view, of course, that the Bush campaign is making a grave mistake now going into federal court to try to dictate what the state of Florida should do. Gene?
Now, John, given the battle for public opinion, I get the clear impression that these statements are being very carefully put together by both sides.
They certainly are, Gene, and we noticed yesterday a retreat from the Gore camp. Democrats were gravely alarmed when the Gore campaign came right out of the box on Wednesday morning saying it was threatening lawsuits, it would take this to court, it would have a protracted legal battle. Many Democrats became alarmed by that. They did not believe it was in the best interest of the country, and frankly, they didn't believe it was in the best interest, long-term interest of the Democratic Party for the Democrats to be talking like that. So what the Gore campaign is focusing on publicly now is saying, let's just have a recount, and the law allows for a hand recount, and at the end of that, we will see what to do next. The Gore campaign distancing itself from any talk of going to court, and now indeed that the Republicans have gone to court, saying, gee, you know, they criticized us when we even talked about it. Now look, they were the first ones to go into court.
At the same time, it was clear that the Gore camp was going to support and will support those lawsuits that have been filed by private citizens.
It's certainly true that they will publicly support those lawsuits filed by private citizens. It's also true there is an army of some 200, perhaps even more now, Democratic lawyers on the ground in Florida, a similar army of Republican lawyers, we should make clear, gathering affidavits and evidence, and the Gore campaign has not ruled out eventually going to court, but they're under a lot of public pressure from Democrats, so let's have this recount and let's stop there. They do not want to go into court, but certainly they're gathering evidence and preserving the option to go to court if they see fit.
What an image. Armies of lawyers. Thanks, John, very much. John King in Washington. Now to West Palm Beach, Florida, where elections workers could have a long day ahead, and CNN's John Zarella is there. John?
Gene, no armies of lawyers here, but certainly armies of journalists here awaiting the start of the recount. From what we understand, the ballots have arrived here at the government center here in Palm Beach County. The 43 to 4,600 ballots that were down in the Delray Beach area that had to be brought up here for the recount represented the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, and the Sheriff's Office went down there to pick those ballots up, bring them back here. They've arrived. They haven't started yet. The canvassing board, the representative canvassing committee, the board, are inside. They were testing the machines a little bit earlier for the machine count that was requested by the Republican Party, and that's expected to start and perhaps simultaneously with the hand count once that begins. Now, there will be 12 piles laid out for the hand count. 10 piles, one for each of the presidential candidates, and 2 additional piles, one for undercounts and one for overcounts. That's people who either did not punch any hole for a presidential candidate or voters who punched more than one hole for a presidential candidate. And the reason for that, of course, is because the Democrats believe that in these precincts where these votes are coming from, there were an inordinately high number of no punches recorded by the machine. And they don't believe that that's correct. They believe that somewhere in there they're going to find out that there were mistakes. And if they find out that there were widespread mistakes there, then they could very easily go back and say, hey, we want a hand recount of all of the ballots in Palm Beach County. Additionally to that, now, we understand, of course, as everyone knows, Republicans have asked for an injunction to stop these hand counts from taking place. In Broward County on Monday, there's another hand count that's expected to take place. Well, they went to court in Miami, U.S. District Court in Miami, and the judge who has gotten a request for the injunction is Judge Donald Middlebrooks. He is an appointee, a Clinton appointee, appointed in 1996. He is from the West Palm Beach area, was an attorney here in the West Palm Beach area, and his expertise is in civil litigation, in civil law, and we understand that he is the judge who was on call this weekend, the federal judge on call this weekend in the Southern District of Florida, who has gotten the request for injunction. Whether he acts on it today, whether he's looking at it now, we do not know. So at this point, though, still waiting on a lot of different avenues to take place here in South Florida, here in West Palm Beach, waiting on the hand count and the machine count to begin. Could take 10, 12, 14 hours, perhaps longer, and also still waiting to see what impact a federal judge might have on the ultimate hand counts taking place here in South Florida. Gene.
Thanks, John. In Miami, the NAACP is holding a public hearing on Tuesday's election. Organization President Kwesi Mfume says he wants to gather testimony on possible voting irregularities involving African-American voters. In a letter to the Attorney General, Janet Reno, Mfume called for a Justice Department investigation and what he called an independent recount of Florida's precincts. Florida is only one state in which the outcome of Tuesday's election is in doubt. Oregon is still considered too close to call. Gore has a lead of several thousand votes. Al Gore won in Wisconsin and Iowa, but Republicans in both those states say they're ready to ask for recounts. And New Mexico, with its 5 electoral votes, has returned to the undecided column. Bush leads there by a handful of votes. The Associated Press puts it at 17 votes. New Mexico must still count another 355 ballots by hand. Joining me now is Hugh Sidey, a contributing editor and columnist for Time magazine. He is the author and editor of the book Portraits of the Presidents. Hugh, you've been around a long time. If you had to write a book covering what we have seen so far of this election, what would you call it?
Well, number one, I would wait about 10 or 20 years before I would try to do this because the evidence is not in. But let me tell you, Jimmy Carter the other night at the White House, when all the former presidents gathered, I think he put it rather well. It's not a constitutional crisis yet. He said it's an unaccustomed event, and he thinks the system will handle it, and I do too. And so my title of my book, perhaps that's not bad, an unaccustomed event.
Hugh, at this point, poll numbers tell us the American people do not think this is a crisis. But do you suppose that would change if it went on for a matter of weeks?
Well, I think if it got all entangled in the courts and then we had half the country or how many states would demand recounts and that
Find out
sort
where
of
it's
thing,
read.
I think then we would have some trouble. But at this point, no. And it looks to me like there's a swell in public opinion to cut it off after a reasonable time. And so far, not bad.
Hugh, as you know, there are some, even in the Democratic Party, who are advising Al Gore to know when to cut this off, that he risks future political damage if he carries this too far in people's eyes. Do you think that is wise advice?
I think it is wise advice. I think in this